Welcome to episode 25 of the Imagine Your Future podcast. I'm Steve Hall, your host for this episode. And as always, I'm pleased to be sharing the mic with my friend and colleague, Karen Collyer.
Okay, hey Steve. I have to say that I love the opportunity to spend this time with you and spend some time with our guests. And I'm looking forward to expanding my horizons a bit today as we talk with our guest, Leon Gilbert, the Senior Vice President of Digital Workplace Services at Unisys. Welcome, Leon. We are so honored to have you on the pod.
Thank you, Karen and Steve. It's really great to be able to talk to you today.
Okay, I'd like to jump right into today's discussion. We have lots to talk about. We sort of have a favorite question that we ask all our guests when we are first starting out our discussion. And that's, would you tell us about your journey? How did you come to be the Unisys Global Lead for its digital workplace services business?
Okay, and I'd love to give you a little bit of history. So, clearly, I'm a Brit. I actually live in the US, and the place that most obviously wouldn't be a place a Brit would relocate to. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. I actually ended up here 12 years ago through the company I was working for at the time in the UK, and got a global role and transitioned out here. So not the most obvious places I mentioned that a Brit would relocate to, but actually, it's a great city, a great climate, and I'm really enjoying my life of living in the US. There are clearly some cultural differences between the two nations, but actually a lot of it is very similar at the same time. But if I start to think a little bit about my journey of where I began in my career, actually, when I left university in the kind of mid-90s, showing my age a little bit, I actually studied information technology and its impact in society. And little did I know, 25-ish years later, actually my role would be all-encompassing in this area. How IT is going to change society, how it would create a global economy in the sense of people being able to work anywhere, any place, anytime. And when I started my studies, that there was no way I ever thought this would be my career, and it's just kind of ironic, but also exciting of how I ended up in the position I am today, and what I do and what I enjoy and love doing and have enjoyed for many, many years. But if I when I left uni, I kind of, a typical person, I wasn't sure, where I was headed in my career. And, I spent probably the first 12 years of my career in the B2C space and the business to consumer space. And actually my first role was actually as a service desk agent. Many, many years ago, I was taking calls from clients, and, it actually grounded me a lot in business. And really started to think about, okay, how we as how experience plays such a part. But those 12 years I grew in my career. I moved from being a service desk agent up through the ranks in various different companies, then switched into a bit of program management, and then around into some consultancy, and that was pretty exciting. But in 2009, I got approached by an organization called Marsh & McLennan to actually go and run all of their end user services. Initially, the European side of it. So I joined them in 2009, and actually that was really the switch from the B2C to the B2B. So when I started to actually get into what I would term digital workplace, whereas before I'd been in the kind of consumer side, really focused on very similar but more to more to customers rather than end users. So once I kind of made this switch to Marsh & McLennan, I various roles there, and increased my seniority throughout that, and did the relocation in 2012 to take the global end user services role. I really got kind of this hook into how does experience play a part in this. And after kind of, I think in 2014, I was approached by Atos to go and actually talk to them about, we'd like you to come in and lead our North American digital workplace business, and jumped at the opportunity. Spent 6 great years at Atos, doing various roles. It started, as I mentioned, as the North American lead for digital workplace, but then, I wanted to kind of work client side. So, passed through that partially through that, I actually went and ran Atos's largest digital workplace client, actually on site, and that taught me a lot around, the actual interactions with clients face to face, actually, being on the real front end of it. And then, the success of that role really then led me to my last role at Atos, which was their global head of digital workplace services. So running a $2 billion business, growing it significantly over 2 years, really evolving their business from end user services to end user experience. And then, so that's kind of how I ended up at Unisys at the back end of last year. I had a conversation with Unisys around would I be interested in coming over and in effect building what I had done at Atos, but at Unisys. And I thought long and hard about it, because it was leaving a $2 billion digital workplace business and actually moving to Unisys and trying to replicate. And I thought long and hard, is that the right move for me in my career? And the more and more I spoke to the leadership team at Unisys, Peter Alterbeth, our CEO and chairman, or Eric Hutto, our president and COO, they convinced me actually Unisys is really focused on this area, is really doubling down, and really wanted to grow in digital workplace. And actually, to me, the biggest thing was that the investment that Unisys were looking to do and are looking to do, and we are now doing in this space. So they convinced me to make the hop over at the start of this year, and 5-6 months into the role now, I am, it was absolutely the right choice for me to kind of make this step and this on my career and the journey to what I believe is, creating something very, very special in the digital workplace market. So that's how I got to where I am. A bit of a plotted history, but actually, thinking back to the university, that was, what I studied at uni, and where I'm at today is exactly how my career has ended where I am today. And it's fantastic. It's exactly, I could never have dreamed of looking back 25 years ago and where I am today, and being in this position. And, I think the future is so bright for what we're doing at Unisys, and also, for myself and my career going forward.
That is awesome, Leon. That's a great story. So again, thank you for joining us. And one of the reasons that we were so excited to have you on the podcast is, Unisys and ISG co-wrote several chapters of the ISG ebook series. We've really got this 90-day self-help program, if you will. And kind of, if we look back from COVID, part of the 90-day challenge is from help me to engage productivity. So when you think about workplace of the future and how we go forward and sort of digital workplace, the whole book was really focused on that. And, Ian Fisher, who is sort of our guru, really has worked with a lot of analysts and a lot of the industry experts, and has really said, the hybrid workplace is really the next normal. I think some are arguing that we're going to go back to normal, back to the corporate world. We'll be 4 or 5 days a week. Don't worry about this. This whole work from home thing is crazy. We really don't have 700 million global offices. Security is not an issue, blah, 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 right? But I think the reality is, from all the clients I talk to, from my own interactions with service providers, what I see as a leader in ISG is we're absolutely in a new normal. Whether it's 2 days a week or 3 days a week or 100% at home, we are in a world where we're going to have 700 million global offices. We are in a world where security and ransomware and everything are so impacted, and we've torn down sort of how we think about the channels. So where do you sort of think about the technology services, some of the frustrations? So if you just kind of talk a little bit about, unified collaboration, the security risk, give us a sense of really what the digital workplace is and your perspective on it.
So it's a great question, and I I'm aware that we published this joint ebook with ISG, which is a fantastic read, and I think that research actually showed what I'm seeing in the market. So to me it showed, I think if I remember the numbers, it was something like 69% of companies will look to deploy some type of hybrid office, and I think the number actually is even higher in Europe than it is in the US. But actually, I think to me, if you look at the US and if you look at North America and you look at Europe, that there's actually, in a way, two different markets. In the US, I think enterprises really have to execute a hybrid office to attract and retain talent, because there is a huge talent war out there, and employees will leave organizations if IT doesn't do what it needs to do, if it doesn't provide that right experience. I think that's absolutely essential. In Europe, I think there's a slightly different relationship, because I think, to me, there's more of a long-term relationship between employer and employee. And primarily that's because of some of the HR laws in those countries, which makes it more difficult to hire and fire, etc. But I think in Europe, what I'm seeing is what companies are looking for is more around how do they maximize the productivity of those employees. So I think there's two different markets, but ultimately they both play on, experience, right? It's no longer, IT is no longer just about calling a help desk or a service desk and that whole old world of IT. It really is experience, and it's, to us, and it is more than just device experience, and it's more than just a word. It's actually what we're terming unified experience management. So where you bring the device experience of that you can have on your machine, that there are some wonderful companies out there that can track everything on your machine to ensure the device is operating in its way, but also the collaboration and communications experience around Teams and Zoom and Slack, ensuring that those tools are working effectively and operating effectively. And I think for us as a business, having that, what we term unified experience management, is crucial. And companies and organizations really need to start thinking about this whole unified experience management, especially when you end up in this hybrid world of some people at home, some people in the office, and this mix. Because I think the companies that think most about experience are going to be the ones that actually win what I would term the talent war. And I think there's one anecdote I'd take from history. If you look at the last major event in the world, in 1945, there was a huge major world event, much how we had with the global pandemic recently, and a little bit still ongoing. But you look at that historic reference, and you look at the economies that recovered the fastest post that event in 1945, Japan and West Germany recovered much faster than, say, the UK, and that was because the old institutions were in effect destroyed, right? So the way of thinking changed, so people just could do something different, whereas in the UK, there wasn't as much devastation, etc., in comparison, which actually meant those old institutions didn't necessarily go away, and it took those economies longer to recover than it did of the Japan or the German economies. And I see that's kind of what I see today in this whole hybrid world. I think the companies that really see hybrid as the new norm are actually the ones that are going to attract talent, retain talent, and actually be successful. I actually have several people who I've been talking to over the last few weeks who are being asked to go back in the office in their various companies, and that's making them think about, do I really want to work in this organization? I've been operating completely effectively for the last 18 months at home. I don't want to be going in an office 5 days a week. And to me, that's a visible sign that talent will go elsewhere. As I mentioned, in the US, talent is the biggest challenge. In Europe, it's slightly different, but still people can move. But I think in the US especially, you have to attract and retain. Europe, as I mentioned, slightly different, but at the same time, productivity and experience are intrinsically linked in my mind. And I think the world, it's a new world, it's a new norm, and we can't just start thinking about how we all used to operate. We've got to think about how we're going to operate going forward.
Okay, so I hear really in both your sort of journey and your response to Steve's question there, I'm really thinking about technology parity. So making sure that everyone has equal access to the same tools, but you're taking it kind of to the next level and talking about experience parity. And I think that experience, based on what you're saying and my own assessment of, what's going on in the market right now, it sort of goes beyond tech. So can you define what you mean for us in talking about experience, and what are you doing to achieve parity for both technology and experience at Unisys and working with your clients?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I think if I stand back a little bit and think about how IT used to operate, IT used to drive, suppliers, managed service providers, etc., in how it wanted it to be. But actually, I'm seeing a huge change in the market now, where the business is driving those decisions and telling the IT teams, this is what we want. This is what the generation Z and Y who are coming into the market today are really looking for. So I'm seeing the business drive a lot more decisions versus kind of IT doing that. And the rationale for that is, I think IT over the last 20 years have created these, what I would term, watermelon metrics that allows IT teams to pat themselves on the back and say, hey, we're doing a great job because all our SLAs are green. But actually, those SLAs aren't really what the business cares about, Karen, right? They care about, actually, is it a good experience? I don't want this helpless desk anymore. I don't want to wait 3 days for someone to turn up and fix a ticket. I want true experience. I want XLAs. I want things that I can measure, that actually shows how much people are enjoying the experience, how they're enjoying that consumer experience that they're getting in their work environment versus what they were used to historically over the last 20 years. But if I think about experience parity and the three things that we consider, I think it's simply break it down into technology, people, and process. So technology plays a key part in that. And clearly, our recent acquisition of Unify Square was one of the key factors of the acquisition of that organization, was to move us to not just be we subscribe to experience. We actually own an experience company now, specifically in the unified collaboration and comms space, which we believe is really the future of business, right? That's where a lot of business has been done over the last 18 months and where it will continue to be done. And we believe that was an essential acquisition for us to create experience parity. So people don't have a different experience whether they're on a Teams or a Zoom call. It has to be equitable. The second one is is clearly around process. So the pandemic made it clear that we have to change our support model from reactive to proactive. And actually, I was already thinking about this 3 to 5 years ago in my previous organization, and I would say the pandemic accelerated that, and that's great, right? Something that would have taken us much longer as a globe. We got there in 3 months rather than in 3 years. But I think the whole process piece is key. From a process perspective, the pandemic really shifted us from 3 years to 3 months, right? And that was fantastic. So business needs to think about their processes for their organizations, right? No longer think about I've got to give everyone the same laptop. I've got to think about process wise, what's a better way of being able to deliver things to end users at home, right? What's a simpler, smarter way of looking at process and making it more and making it easier? Actually, we have large clients. I think one example would be we've got a large advertising client. That we really worked on their processes of how we help them to set up all of their home networks. But going beyond that, also helping them with, hey, do you want us to portion out your Wi-Fi so your kids don't just burn your Wi-Fi when you're all working at home? So we started to work with some of our clients on helping them with some problems beyond just, I can't do an Active Directory password reset. So I think business needs to start thinking about process. And I think the third thing is around is people, right? It is people are crucial to everything we do. Just because when you're in a conference room, it doesn't mean that you're going to have this mix of people in conference rooms, people at home, and businesses have never been set up for that. So you got to think about the people and how they start to operate technology in this new hybrid world, and organizational change management will play a huge part in that for the experience parity, and how we start to educate, inform, and the success of that is crucial in business. I think it's often a big part that people forget, that adult learning is different from learning that we all did at school and at university. So we have to handle organizational change management in a different way around IT. But the companies that really adopt and are good at organizational change management really do succeed, and they see the benefit of the importance of that to their employees, and also that ultimately the employees' end user experience becomes better.
No, I agree. Hey, Leon, I'm going to take you back to your analogy a little bit on the 1945 event, because I think it's really relevant. One of the things, the other argument on the 1945 event is the amount of investment that was made in Japan and German economies that weren't made in the ally economies, if you will, right, to rebuild those. I wonder if, using that same analogy, if we're going to see a difference in industries that were absolutely rocked by the pandemic. So think of travel and transportation, retail, hospitality, entertainment, versus those that, quite frankly, came out sort of unscathed from the pandemic. Financial services have done really well. Though the earnings on those have been great. Obviously, high tech has done amazing. And what we see a little bit is, let's kind of take the FANG guys. You look at Facebook, Apple, Google, Netflix, sort of that whole group, Microsoft. We're hearing stories of those guys coming back to work. Insurance, big insurance providers. We're hearing lots of stories of those folks being mandated to come back to work. I think there were some articles in Wall Street Journal last week that were quite public, with several big banks in New York mandating people come back to work. I think they were even mandating that they had to be vaccinated and come back to work, and they were going to focus on the 98%, not the 2%. Do you think we're going to see a change because of those economies or those industries that weren't really impacted compared to the ones that were, and have to make those massive investments to change, drive their digital transformation as they're trying to retain talent?
Yeah, I do. I like you. I think the businesses within each of those sectors, the vertical sectors that weren't necessarily impacted, I think that they need to change, and that they will change, because back to my comment earlier on is, that the talent war is real, and talent will move on, Steve, right? That they'll go and find something where a company will want them, will treat them as people want to be treated, and people have learned that you can do your role anytime, anywhere, any place, as the pandemic's taught us. And actually, if you're being asked to kind of go into an office and you can do your role elsewhere, then why would you want to work at an organization that does that? Like, collaboration is important, but it doesn't mean it has to be 5 days a week or 4 days a week, right? It's important to reach that balance. I think human nature is we always want to communicate with people, and face to face is great, right? And it needs to happen, but it doesn't need to be every day, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. To me, those organizations that really embrace the hybrid world will be those that will succeed in the future. And I think we, like you, I've read many of those articles with companies saying, yes, you can all go in the office, or you have to go in the office, or no, you don't. And I think what it's and I've also seen some of the backlash, Steve, from some of those companies that are saying this, and I think that's pretty important factor to really note, right? The people have choices now, and the people who will choose to kind of go and do something else will, ultimately those are the ones who will drive a business forward. So at Unisys, we're taking a similar approach. We're we're specifically for our own associates, we're working with them on a hybrid approach to ensure that we can deliver for our clients, but also respect our associates on how they have evolved over the last 18 months. I think some of our associates actually are super excited to go back in the office, because I think something that people have often forgotten during this pandemic is not everybody has the ability to naturally easily work from home. Think about people who live in multi-generational homes or shared accommodation. That's a much harder work from home that it is if you have your own place or you rent your own place. So I think the companies that succeed are those who offer choice, and within that, the companies that then have the infrastructure and IT to support that true experience of both home and in office working, and create that experience parity between the two.
Yeah, I mean, if we do this right, could be a great thing for diversity and inclusion and sort of social equity in so many ways. Because you're exactly right. We're already seeing a lot of the attrition issues, even in Europe. There was another article, I think it was last week, that some organizations were calling for 40% attrition rates. And it was just people shifting jobs within the same career, but because of how their organization treated them or proceeded to treat them during COVID and how they were responding post-COVID, I think they were calling it the Great Resignation. But with that, there was, a little bit of hyperbole there, clearly from the writers on this, but this sense that people are going to move. And I think more than anything else, we're going to be able to unleash some power that we haven't been able to do before. We're working with a group in the UK, kind of for people with autism or different learning disabilities that haven't been able to function particularly well in a office environment, but are brilliant at other things. We're working with open talent and talent management and gig economy groups where you can start thinking through work in such a different way because of this unleashes. So I think there's a lot of power. And employees are going to find ways to work with or without IT, but you're absolutely right. Bringing that digital experience and that workplace together. I get this sense, and you've said it a couple times, there's a really big generational angle. And I think some of the research that you and Ian did that was so fascinating to me is where we would expect the Gen Zs want to stay at home and the millennials want to stay at home and the boomers want to come to work. There was some really interesting things there. Boomers, many of them wanted to stay at home, better work-life balance, they felt. They didn't want the traffic, those types of things. I think the other piece on the millennials and Gen Z, this part, when you're that early in your career, there are a lot of things that you have to learn, you have to do, and they want that experience of collaboration, some of that real. How do you sort of see this all working out? And let me just throw two other thoughts at you as you think through that. One, I'm a huge fan of asynchronous communications. I think collaboration asynchronously is going to change how we all think. And we're doing so much of our work now asynchronously. And quite frankly, it's better. But security is a big, broad issue with that as well. If you think about, again, the home devices, people thinking differently, all the different tools that are coming in. What's sort of your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I think lots of the points you raised are absolutely valid. Security is something that Unisys are very well known for, right? So to me, security is something that you have to have as an overriding play, and it's clearly where our history is. And we have products like our Clear Path Forward product, which is well known in this industry. But actually, I just want to go back to something you raised, Steve, or a little just in your opening part there was around the hiring of different kind of folks. I've actually done very, very similar thing that I've actually hired. We actually have a program on right now to actually go and hire similar thing, autistic people from different backgrounds, because actually, as you said, right, hard to work in an office, but actually, because they will, it's often a confidence thing, but actually, once they get into a role, they will be in that role for many, many years, and there's a real, passion, excitement to doing a perfect job. So we've taken a similar path, and I've taken a similar path since I joined Unisys in looking at different ways to hire people in some of my teams, especially in the support teams, where I think we all know the support teams in IT often is a transitional role to moving into something bigger, a bit like how my career started. But I've been looking at that very similar thing around that, and also I've been looking at hiring moms or mums, depending on whether you're in UK or US, to come and help in some of my support functions for 5 to 6 hours a day. Because actually, I think there's a huge untapped pool of talent there that has either left the workplace over the last few years because they just couldn't do it because they had to go in an office every day. But actually, COVID's allowed us to start thinking there's this untapped pool of talent that exists right out there that want to work but just couldn't find the role, and we're really doubling down in this space because actually, again, to me, I think a lot of those folks will have a much longer tenure, a really good high quality of work ethic. So super excited about looking at many different ways of hiring different talent. And the one of the thing that you mentioned was actually people that you kind of maybe covered a little bit at the start was people, who wants to go in the office, who doesn't. But actually, if we think about what's clearly most important to us all in the world and for our kids and our grandkids and the future generations is the environment. And actually, the less traveling we do into an office, actually, the better it is for our environment in the sense of, the amount of paper we print out, the amount of petrol or gas we use in our cars, right? All of that leads to environmental challenges. And actually, I think the home working actually really helps us in that space as well, in thinking more around longer term, the whole carbon footprint. So I think there's so many benefits to this home working piece. Security, as you said, is absolutely important, and as we all shifted to home, we all had to think about how do we make sure that all of our associates are secure in their home, right? And people aren't looking at their screens and all of that side of it. But I think once you get past that piece and you ensure that you have the security and the rigidity there, I think everything is set to actually really accelerate the economy and the companies that, as I mentioned, right, that adopt and really think of smart ways to kind of start to operate going forward. And lastly, I think my kids are almost about to enter the working kind of life. My eldest is approaching 18 in a year or so, and she has never known a world without an iPad or an iPhone or an Android device, right? And so the old way of IT just doesn't work for her, and that's how we need to think, and that's how I talk to my teams every day. In 5 to 6 years, those folks are going to be in the economy, and they will never want a world of I have to call somebody, I have to wait 2 days for something to turn up. That's the way I'm really thinking about how we as Unisys grow our business and how we focus on experience and how we focus on really what is digital experience, what is unified experience management, and what does it mean that actually it's just simple, it's easy, it's consumable, and it's just not a challenge to deal with IT anymore. And that's why my whole shift is to digital experience, to XLAs versus SLAs, and thinking about our customers as actually they're thinking exactly the same way. Because I don't think you can anymore think about a green SLA being somebody answering a phone in 30 seconds. I honestly don't care when I contact someone, as long as the experience is great. That's what I remember. I don't remember it took 31 seconds or 33 seconds to answer that call. I remember, did I enjoy the experience and was I satisfied at the end of it? And if the answer is yes, could have taken 10 seconds, 15, I wouldn't even have remembered. But that to me is what we are trying to do at Unisys as an organization, and how we're pivoting our business to end user experience from our heritage in the past.
You've said so much that I want to comment on. The things that are sort of floating through my brain it's the future's a combination of rigidity in terms of like security. You're going to have very rigid standards, regardless of the environment, home, office, or hybrid. But the flexibility to address things like the she session that COVID caused, right? By forcing a lot of women out of the workplace because they had to do caregiving for their kids who were learning at home. What you're talking about is inviting them back to participate in the economy, and that's just so exciting. The flexibility to address the millennials and the Gen Zs and what their needs are going to be going forward. I really like that thought in thinking about the future in that way. I want to ask you what you've talked about service level agreements or XLAs and technology changes. What do you think the next big innovation is going to be on the digital workplace services horizon? So where are we going to go next?
It's a really good question, and if I had a crystal ball, it would be great. And
I know, right?
I know, and I told someone a story last week, and I just to share with you guys and the podcast listeners. So when I was, I don't know, 15, 16, I was doing my first job, at school, and it was, typical job that you do, right? I think I was delivering food or something, but I had this vision at the time of actually, what if you could order through an app, blah, 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 right? And 25 years later, you have companies like DoorDash and Just Eat, right? And I always regret never taking that on. So, I maybe, I wish I'd had that crystal ball then and actually taken that on. But where do I think this digital workplace is going? I think my sense is that experience is the play, right? It really is. The device experience is the unified collaboration experience. It is everything about how end users, how people in offices feel about what they're doing in their day-to-day business, right? I think there's no. The pandemic accelerated something that would have taken us 3 to 5 years to get there. So it almost has accelerated to where kind of looking in the future, 12 to 18 months is even harder. But to me, it is, how do we get from where everybody thinks they are today to actually a true experience play, Karen? A really, really, that where it just has that, it's just fluid. It's just easy. When I join an organization, I get the device of my choice. I get the phone of my choice. I'm not constricted to, you must have X phone or Y phone. You must have X device or Y device. That to me is where I think in the next 18 months to 3 years is where businesses, some are there today, but very few. But I think where all business has to be is I get to choose what I want, right? I get to choose when I work, where I work, the device I have, the phone I have. And actually, then I get to choose the support I want. If I want to call somebody, I call them. If I want to use chat, I chat with them. It's about consumer choice. It's about choice, and it's almost like, think about consumer choice in the same way. That to me is what the future is. It is really IT and becoming almost like looking at the consumer world and thinking that's where we have to be. And I think about great experiences, Karen, that I have when I'm, in my personal life and in business life, when I'm traveling, right? And I can, I look at some of those experiences and I take them back with me into my work life, and I think we should do that, right? Because that's a great way of doing something. And, every little thing gives me a little idea in what to do next. But ultimately, I think it is, it has to be fluid, it has to be simple, and it has to care about the person and the persona of the individual, and feel individualized, not be just a one size fits all approach. And I think that's where businesses will get to in IT. And I think the businesses that get there and adopt the hybrid world successfully will be those who truly succeed and attract the right talent, because ultimately business can't succeed without the right talent, and that right now and in the future will be crucial as we switch away from this kind of where we are today. And I think it's just super exciting time. And I think I've joined the right company at the right time that's investing in this space, and we're truly, looking at what other investments we can do in this space to become. And I don't mean this in a whatever way, as I want us to be the number one digital workplace provider, and I'm pretty sure we will get there very, very quickly. We're just being smart about what we do and when we do it, because I think we have so much heritage in Unisys, and actually it's that pivot to being not just seen as a heritage business to being seen as something pretty cool and exciting. And that's where I think our acquisition of Unify Square the market started to see that. And I think over the next few months and over a year or so, I think business is going to see what Unisys is about to become specifically as a digital workplace business, but obviously other areas as well. But that's what I'm embracing, and that's why I joined the organization, and it's why I could talk all day about digital workplace. But it's just my passion, and I love doing what I do, and I love talking to clients about it as well. I don't put PowerPoints up at all. I just sit down and talk around where I think things are going. I think that message resonates a lot more than kind of like death by PowerPoint, which I see so many times.
Yeah, you're right, Leon. As Karen said, my mind is buzzing. I'm a big reader and a fan of history as well. And I keep kind of going back to Nicholas Carr's book on the big switch. And I just keep thinking that you were so right on the experience, because for 25 years, it's taken us to industrial IT, where it was, I'll say trusted is probably the best word, that my laptop would work or my PC would work or my mobile device would actually just work, right? We're past those days. Apps work and stuff now. Now it truly is all about the experience, and this concept of, call handling time or average response time, or all this silliness that we did to really industrialize IT is really accelerating through the experience. So just like, back in 1920, 1930, electricity came along, you expected to hit the lights and the lights would just come on, but most of the time they wouldn't. So it took us up till the 60s, 70s, even into the 80s to really get the grid to be able to build that resiliency and trust. But we have that. Then all of a sudden you can say, well, now what are all the cool devices that I could do? What are all the things? So you had the explosion in the 50s, obviously. You just see these generational things that are taking place, and you're so right on the experience. So with that, let me say thank you so much for being on the podcast. I think we could go another hour easily. I think our listeners really learned a lot on this one. They've got a lot to ponder. So any final thoughts from you, Leon, and then Karen, from you, any closing remarks?
Oh, I'd just like to thank both you, Steve, and Karen for your time today. It's been really insightful, and I really enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you, Leon. I really enjoyed it too. In terms of closing remarks, just the usual. I'd like to remind everyone that if you liked what you heard today, you can hear more from the Imagine Your Future team by accessing our website at www.isg-1.com/podcasts, or by subscribing wherever you get your podcast content. If you have an episode idea, or if there's a guest that you'd like to hear more from, let us know. And in the interim, please take good care, and we'll talk to you soon.